Lingam, who's here really to tell us a little bit about how to set up some solid foundations in your business so that we can kind of create a more sustainable business from the outset, or from whatever stage you're in business, I guess. Even if you haven't got them set up right now, you can still do it. It's never too late. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that, because it is so important to be setting up the foundations of a business in order for it to thrive. So I'm just going to check that we are live, even though it sometimes says that we are, sometimes not always there. Yes, there we are. So I can put that away. And so, so Joanna, do you want to just introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So thank you so much, Natasha, for having me on here. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Joanna. I have a background in law, and I am also a theta healer. So I help mainly women to transition from something which is their corporate job into a job which is their soul calling. And often this is something which is to do around setting up their business. So I use my legal skills to help build that solid foundation, because setting up a business can be a vulnerable time. So it's using those skills to set up something which is solid, and also on the healing side, using those skills and different modalities to support people through that whole process of setting up a business.
Yeah, beautiful. And it's so great, isn't it? Because when we get out there and we do what we do, it's what we want to go out and how we want to work with people. That's our skill, and the business side of things, we have to learn that all really quickly. And it is a bit, fumbly and like uncertain and not really knowing. And all we want to really do is go out there and share what we're good at. We always want to spend all that time setting up a business, right?
Absolutely. I think, and I mean, especially in the current climate with everything that's going on, I'm finding that so many people are in the space of, oh my God, something which I thought was a stable business is no longer a stable business, my 9 to 5. And I'm in the space now where my contract has ended or I've been made redundant. How do I step into something which is a business of my own? And how do I navigate the whole uncertainty of it? And I suppose we are in uncertain times, but setting up a business can feel a bit foreign at the beginning. It can feel like, oh my God, I'm stepping on, uncertain ground. It feels like the ground is crumbling under you almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so good to know that there are a few simple things that we can do that can help us. It doesn't have to be so daunting. And if we think about, some of the tips that you're going to be sharing with us in a little while, and how we can do that, because if we don't build, I guess, those solid foundations, it's like anything. Like if we think about Lego or, just anything that we're building, if it hasn't got a solid foundations, the further up we go, the more wobbly it all becomes. So we need to make sure that we don't end up pulling it all out from underneath our feet in some ways, right?
Absolutely. Completely agree with that.
Yeah. And I guess that must happen quite a lot for businesses. I hear that.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing is, I mean, as we most of us know that, starting a business can be really exciting at the beginning, because you're like, oh my God, I'm doing this. I'm becoming independent. I'm doing this for myself. And then you get, a month, 6 months, a year down the line, and it's like, actually people are now asking me for refunds because they're not happy with my service, or I didn't quite keep details of this person that I saw, so I'm a bit all over the place at the moment. And I think it is just making sure that you've got those things right at the beginning. And like you said, even if you're building a house, you wouldn't necessarily start building a house and then start living in it without having the proper bricks and everything around it, or a roof, for example. And it's the same with the business. It's like absolutely maintaining that passion and that excitement, but having the right things in place to know that you've got that backup and you've got those solid things that you can rely on if things do go wrong.
Absolutely. I mean, I it's something that I feel really, really strongly about. And then, like, my feeling is, the longer that we spend, just making sure that we have those foundations and those things in place, the stronger, more certain that we feel about, our business and what we're doing and how we can take that out into the world. So yeah, I mean, I'm a real systems head, so I come from that background. So I'm like, yeah, bring it on. Like, let's make a system, let's make something like that. But I get that, and a lot for my clients as well, really that's not what they want to be doing, and that's not what they enjoy. And so, yeah. So how did you kind of get into kind of shifting? I know you come from a law background, but how did that, tell us a little bit about your journey?
So I suppose my journey was essentially at the beginning very traditional, I suppose, listening to my parents, society saying, yes, you absolutely have to go through this, down this route and down this, I don't know what to call it, alleyway of life. Go do your degree, go and get a job, become a lawyer. Literally before I even knew what a lawyer was, I knew that I was going to become a lawyer. So this is what my life was. And then I got to the point where I was like, hold on a minute, there's something missing. There's just something doesn't add up. I'm not going to a job, 24/7, literally, starting at ridiculous times, finishing, just before bedtime almost. And it was like, this is not what life is meant to be. So I at that point, for me, it was more of a stage of, I'm going into burnout mode. I need something that is going to help me with this whole situation. And at that point, I went on a healing course. And although I'd already done a lot of different modalities, tried different things, tapping, yoga, Reiki, I've done various different modalities, I hadn't really thought about putting it into practice as a business. And so after I'd done this healing course, I was like, actually, this is what I need in my life. I need a bit more of using my intuition as opposed to using my brain 24/7 and trying to, cure things from that space, because it's just not working.
Hard work, right?
Absolutely. And as you will know, working with the Akashic records, it's something which is completely different to what we're taught. So when I was in that space, I was like, right, I'm just ready to take my life in a different direction. And from there, I suppose it's just been a very interesting journey. And I've been on this journey now for about 2 years. I started my business at the beginning of last year now. So it's been a very interesting journey. I've learned so much about myself, and it's just been amazing, really. It's almost like when you take that step, it's like, oh my God, I realized that I've got all of this experience. And in terms of using the legal knowledge to help other entrepreneurs or other healers, other wellness entrepreneurs, essentially it's heart-centered people who wanted to come and serve from that place. And it's really supporting them to step into their power. And I suppose for me, I'd helped set up businesses before. So it was something that is just like, okay, well, I know how to do this. Why is it that I'm not using it to serve a greater number of people?
Yeah, beautiful. And your journey resonates a lot with mine as well. And I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people here, who've either gone through that or are about to go through that, and I know that some people are in the group here are thinking about how to set up their business. And, I really do believe, even though we are in challenging times right now is the perfect time to be doing what we love and to stepping away from the things that we should be doing or that we've fallen into or we've been gently guided towards and away from our own natural abilities. But we do something you said as well really resonated with me. It's like how we bring our skills from those things, because nothing is by accident, nothing is wasted. So we haven't wasted any of that time, and I feel very strongly about that on my own journey. But we've got all these beautiful, wonderful skills that we can bring together, to create then and birth something really completely new. And how we bring those skills and those expertise in, because often when we start a brand new business, we feel like complete novices. We don't know anything at all. And it's important to remember that we actually really do.
Absolutely. Totally agree with that.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? So I know you've got some great tips to share with us. So tell us about the first one.
Okay, so the first one that I would definitely suggest to all entrepreneurs, whether you're new, whether you are experienced, is definitely have things in place to make sure that you're complying with the legislation that you have to. So if you're starting a business and you're serving people in any way where you're collecting their data, you need to put in place things which comply with the GDPR. So we would have all heard about this. It's that time when you got a million emails saying like 20 times, do you want to be part of my mailing list? Those things. It's making sure that you are also doing that for your clients. And the reason why it's really important, it's not only just to comply with the GDPR, it's also because you really want to build that trust with your clients, and so that they know that you're not just going to take their data, sell it onto a third party, or you're not just going to do whatever with it, leave it on a train, and that you've got professional things set in place. It's like you've got those systems, you've got those structures, and that you are honoring their personal data. Because the thing is, especially with people in this sort of community, people may come to you with very personal things, and they don't want you sharing it with everyone else. You know, they don't want you then telling their friend who is going to come and say, oh, by the way, I was speaking to so and so and they told me that you had this problem that you spoke to them about. It's really having that in mind in anything that you do. Make sure that you've got things like your privacy notice in place. Make sure that you are checking the data you hold about people. And if you do hold data about people, like so their name, their email address, their telephone number, just basic things like that, that you are you have it on a system where it's locked down so that no one can just come and access it, for example. So that's the first thing that I really think is really important.
So you just mentioned about the privacy policy. Now I have one in place, but is there somewhere that you you know, if people haven't got one, can you recommend somewhere where people can go, or how would they go about creating a privacy policy?
So
I think that would be really useful.
Is so the first thing that I would say don't do is do not copy it and paste it from someone else's website. Because you know, everyone has got their own retention policy, the way that they hold things. It's always very different. And in the wellness community, I find a lot that sometimes they're like, oh well, someone else has just got it, I'm just going to copy and paste it. I would say definitely think about what are the things that you hold, what do you need it for. So for example, if you have a online booking service, or if you've got a payment service online, make sure that you know what you're storing for, like if you're storing their payment details, if you're storing their anything else on your booking system, make sure that you know exactly what you're holding. In terms of actually getting your privacy notice done, you can absolutely go to the Information Commissioner's Office website, and there is a lot of guidance on there which you can absolutely use. But just make sure that if you're using the template, that you are making it bespoke for your business and not pasting it from someone else.
No, that's really great. And if there are templates out there, then to, you know, knowing that it can be relatively easy to set one up and to keep it quite simple, and just think, I guess, about the processes and what you're actually using data and where you're doing that, and having a kind of data flow. Perhaps, so that you're really clear about what you're holding and what you're using, and then it becomes much easier to create that privacy policy.
Absolutely,
that makes sense. So that's a really great tip. And you also said, you know, making sure that you've got the data locked down, I guess, is like password protecting, things like that.
So I always recommend, where possible, have it on electronic copy, because then you don't have papers lying around where it may be locked in an office, it may be in a cabinet somewhere, and then, you know, it's left open. If possible, have it electronically saved. If you've got it electronically saved, make sure that you have, like you said, password protected. Make sure that it's not all just like dumped into one place where you cannot retrieve it after, if someone comes and says, oh, by the way, I want to know what data you've got about me. And also make sure you know who's got access to that computer.
Yes. That's really important, because often, you know, we have our computers lying around and we don't have, you know, if it's not a laptop, if it's a hard desktop, you know, our kids could be using it, and you just never know where information could zoom off to.
Nowadays it's like, you know, you may think you have access of it over your computer, but then you don't know if there's, like, you know, all this malware and all this stuff that's going on. So just making sure that you're doing what you can to protect your privacy.
That's really helpful. And I think, as you also said, you know, it's about building trust in your customers, because you may know that you never would do anything intentionally, but actually, if you really understand what you need to do with that data and you're putting proper measures in place, you can reassure your customers and your clients that that's what you're doing, because then you know that you're doing it right. So actually, that's a really important point. We know as practitioners, and I know everyone in this community is doing things from the goodness of their heart to create an impact, change in the world for the good. You know, we would never do that intentionally, but we might not. Like, awareness is the first key, isn't it? It's really knowing where we're storing all this stuff.
Absolutely.
So that's brilliant. Thanks, Joanna.
That's all right. And what I also say is, whenever you're thinking about clients' data, it's making sure that you're treating the data as you would like your own data to be treated, essentially. So when you give your data away to someone, or when you put your name and address down, do you think to yourself, oh, actually, what they're going to do with that? It's the same way.
Yes, that's very true, isn't it? You know, we're used to dealing with data, but actually, you know, I'm very, you know, concerned about where my data is and what people are doing with it. So really good point. So what's your second tip then?
So the second tip is definitely to have in place something which is a contract or terms and conditions, whichever way you want to call it. But it's just having that set out right at the beginning saves so much hassle. The things that I alluded to at the beginning about, people requesting refunds or people not paying on time, people not showing up for sessions. Those are so things which are so common. And the amount of people that say, oh, do you know what, I give up now because people just don't take my business seriously, or they don't want to pay the price that I'm charging. Those things can really easily be avoided just by having that contract in place right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I think it's like having it set out as well, especially with different therapies and modalities. Sometimes it's not so clear at the beginning what people are going to get. So, for example, with
that's usually the case with me.
Absolutely. It's like, what exactly are you doing?
Yeah.
To who? I don't really know what that is. So it's almost like, if all of that is set out right at the beginning and your client is given a chance to read over it, they completely understand, all of those things, that you're not making any guarantees, you're not making any health claims, you're not making any promises that you're going to speak to, I don't know, their grandfather who's passed away, for example. You're not guaranteeing anything, so they know what to expect when they come to you. And equally, when it comes to things like payment, when it comes to things like cancellation or lateness, or things like them really being abrupt and rude, all of those things are set out right at the beginning, and it just saves so much time, so much hassle. And also it puts you come across as a professional, as opposed to, oh, I'm just doing this as a hobby, something on the side. It's just just something that I'm doing for a bit of cash.
Yeah, that's such an interesting one as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about that whole professional thing. But the contract is so key. I have always had a contract in place, and it's I've learned a few lessons along the way when something happened, and I was like, oh, that's not been quite clear in my contract, and really redefining it, because every business again is different, and I guess we don't always know exactly how we're going to be doing things, so there is a little bit of learning, I guess, in that.
Absolutely. And especially, I think it's not only just the one-on-one sessions. A major thing that I've come across is retreats, because there are so many people in the wellness community nowadays who are holding retreats, hosting retreats, and it's fantastic. I know from personal experience, the changes are immense, but it's just, all you need is one person on that retreat to be like, actually, I've had some food which hasn't agreed with me, and that I'm allergic to something, and that could be the end of your business almost. So it's not to scaremonger, it's more to just have those things in place so that you can avoid all of that hassle.
Yeah, and to get real clarity. And I feel that it's a perfect opportunity. So say when you're setting out your terms and conditions, and you're setting out maybe your session cancellation, I've always found that when I've explained that, and here's the bit in the contract that explains about cancellation policy, and just then to say, oh, is that okay, then people kind of they kind of take it in on a level, and they just respect those boundaries, because they understand there's a boundary in place. Of course, if something's, I always say, people say, well, I've got kids, and what if, I'm like, always flexible about that, but I do expect that you give me as much notice, not that, oh, I forgot I had a theatre appointment, sorry, it's like 10 minutes of a session and I'm like on my way somewhere. That's not.
And I think also it's really important for a practitioner to also have that respect for themselves and their time as well. So by having it in a contract, it's like, well, if I've put my time aside, so if, let's say, an hour that you've put aside to hold your session for that client, then you respect your time as well. So you're not saying it's fine, you can just take the mickey and cancel last minute because I'm just going to sit around here and do nothing. You also value your own time, and you're discerning in how you actually serve people as well, because you don't want to be in that space where you're just literally sacrificing your own time and just giving and ending up feeling disheartened.
Absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that, because it is absolutely true. Because we often, as we were talking, my intention was that it's one way, it's one directional. I was just thinking, oh, we're giving that to the client, but actually this is about really being strong in your own intentions and your own integrity and valuing yourself. And if you don't value yourself, sometimes we're like, oh, I don't want to be too fussy, and if I tell clients this and but if we are not valuing ourselves. What is the message we're actually giving our clients about us, our services, and how we work?
Absolutely. It's so true.
So true. Thank you for mentioning that. That is so important. So make note of that, everybody. Yeah. Very, very true. Thank you. And then your final tip.
So the final one is just around being professional. And I suppose that is, that feeds in from both of the two things that we've talked about already. And it's so important. I know for a lot of people when they are starting a business, and it's almost like they've got to have that commitment with being on time to a session or making sure they block out a certain amount of time for their session. Sometimes it can initially feel like, oh no, this is a burden. Like I'm having to sacrifice my time to be with a client. And I suppose it feeds in from the whole point of having terms and conditions. It's almost like you expect your client to be there for you on time. And in the same way, make sure that you're there for them on time as well. In order to build a stable business, just make sure right from the beginning you're being professional in every way. And that way you almost like you set the tone right at the beginning. You're being professional. You're there to offer them a service and they offer you payment in return, which is, completely professional. And that way you sort of start off as you wish to go on.
Yeah, no, that is so important. That's such an important thing as well, isn't it? And it's a bit like, I think when we're starting out and we're doing, thinking we're doing really wonderful things with clients, and then they're like, oh, I haven't got the money to pay you, or can I pay you tomorrow? Like if you went for a haircut, you wouldn't turn around to the hairdresser and say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot my purse.
Exactly, yeah.
Can I pay you next time I'm in 3 months?
Exactly. They wouldn't let you leave.
You never expect in a million years. Yeah. So why should we to give our services in lieu and expect payment at some point in future or at the end of the month? I find that, we don't do that in any other industry.
It's so true. And I think especially with healers, when they start off and it's like, oh, I'm going to do it for my friend, or I'm going to do it for my mom, or I'll do it at mate's rate, so it's all good, it's fine.
The mate's rates,
absolutely. And then you end up stuck in that place because it's like, oh no, I've charged this person £10 or £20 or something like that. So then when you try to raise your fees, or when you start to see actually people are having results, I really need to start charging more because it's costing me time to be here. People are going to start saying, actually, how come last time you only charged me a tenner and now you're trying to charge me like £50? What's going on? Start as you wish to go on.
Yeah, start as you mean to go on, and then you can keep going from there. And what everything you say is just such a valid reminder. And even me being in business now for nearly 5 years, I'm thinking, maybe I need to go just back and reread my contract that I have with my clients and just see if there's something I need to tweak, or is there something that next level of professionalism that I could put into it, or how can I do that? And just being as clear as possible. And these things are never done, right?
It's so true. Yeah. And that's the thing, unless you actually make a point to do it, they can always be one of them things that are just like, oh, I'll do it next week, I'll do it the week after, sort of thing. Unless you consciously make the effort and you're like, okay, I need to do this, and sit down and just know that by sitting down and having that half an hour, 1 hour of just going through and just tweaking what needs to be tweaked, that may potentially save you so much time in the future. Just having gone back and read over your contracts, it's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a really valid point. So everyone that's got these things in place already, don't think this is like, I'm done, I'm sorted. Go back and just have as you say, it just needs to be an hour. Just put half an hour aside, have a look at those things and just see where you're at, and if anything needs kind of upgrading, tweaking. As we grow as a business, all our systems need to upgrade and up level with us. We cannot possibly bring old systems with us and expect our business to keep going in a new and different way. It just doesn't work energetically. It doesn't. Well, thank you, Joanna. That was really great. I'm so delighted you shared that with us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on here. I'm really, really happy to be here to share with you.
Yeah. My pleasure. So tell us if there's anything that you'd like to just share with the community, how people can get hold of you. I mean, we'll obviously put the links in the posts. And if you've got any questions about anything we've talked about, then please do tag Joanna and I in the comments, and we will come back and answer those as well. But yeah, Joanna, have you got anything you'd like to?
I will share down below a free PDF that I've created on how to build a solid foundations for your business. And what I'd really like to share is, for those of you who are in a state of uncertainty at the moment, as most people are, definitely use this time to your benefit. You know, you've got this time now. So if it means that you are thinking about setting up a business and you haven't quite had the time to do it, then now is absolutely the time to do it. If you've been thinking about tweaking your systems, have a think about that now. You know, use this time to your advantage and really do something for yourself. You know, if you've always been passionate about doing something, don't wait, do it now. And I am more than happy to take any questions that you have. You can find me on I've got a Facebook page, which we will leave the links down below. Yep. But thank you so much, Natasha, for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. And I've loved chatting to you. And yeah, I'm sure we will have more conversations about all of this at some point in the future. And yeah, so thank you everybody for watching, and do let us know if you have any questions at all. We will be, either Joanna or I will come and answer them. And yeah, we'll post the links as well, so you can find Joanna and ask her questions personally as well. And we'll see you again next week for the Soul Wisdom training here in the group at 4 p.m. on Wednesday as normal. Thanks and bye for now.
Thanks so much.